complicated process for everyone to say hi in a way that makes sense, and we're not sort of crazy on the list of people. So I think last time we did this, we did it alphabetically. And so if everyone would mind opening their participants list, obviously you are going to pop up first. But it would be helpful if we could go through and just acknowledge everyone and have an opportunity to say hi. So I'm Dina Blaze. I'm the Director of the Office of Regional Development for Salt Lake County. And then I'm going to ask Rosie to go next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me?
Yeah, just to introduce yourself.
I'm Rosie Hernandez, Administrative Assistant with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Thanks, Rosie. And Jory.
Jory Johnner, Wasatch Front Regional Council, Long Range Planning. And I just saw Steve pop up, so Mr. Pastrick.
Great. So I'm just going to go through this list.
Did you want me to do that, or how did you want me to? I didn't know.
No, here's the problem. All of the names, if you open the participant list, obviously your individual name will show up first, and then all the hosts and everything. So I kind of wanted to get through the hosts for Wasatch Front, and then we'll go on to we'll start with Adam, who's I think one of our first in terms of the alphabetical list of names. So if Julie Bornstadt, if you just want to say hello and introduce yourself to the whole group.
Yeah, hi, I'm Julie Bjornstad, Transportation Planner in our Long Range Planning Group here at WFRC.
Okay, and then Mike, also with Wasatch Front.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Sopchik here with Wasatch Front Regional Council, and I'm the Communications Manager.
Okay, so I think we got everybody that's listed as a host. I'm going to throw it to Adam because you're the first A on the list alphabetically. So Adam, do you want to start, and then we'll just run down the list?
Sure. You bet. I'm Adam Hall. I work for UDOT Traffic and Safety as a Traffic Studies and Design Engineer.
And then there's an A. Olson.
Yes, I'm Adam Olson with Midvale City.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
I'm Brittany Ward. Oh, Brittany Ward with Sandy City.
Okay, Alex.
Alex Bain, UTA Planning.
Great, Alex, thank you. And we have Ari.
Ari Bruning, Envision Utah.
Okay, Becca.
Becca Rolfe, Salt Lake City Transportation.
Okay. Sorry, I've got names. Hey, Bert, we missed Bert from Wasatch Front.
Hi, Dina.
Introduce yourself to everybody. We probably know you, but
still. You'll hear me later. Bert Granberg with the Analytics Group at Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Okay, and Ben.
Ben Withridge with Wasatch Front Regional Council staff.
Okay, and then I have Brent.
Hey, Brent Chamberlain. I'm in Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning on faculty at Utah State.
Okay, welcome. And Brian Moore.
Brian Moore with Riverton City. I'm the Public Works Engineering Manager.
And Brittany, Cody, are you on with us?
Hey, Cody Lutz. I'm a planner with Envision Utah.
Okay, I got to run. Thanks, Dave.
I'll drop this off. Thanks.
Oh, okay, I've got Grant.
Grant Kroll, City of Bluffdale.
Hey, Grant. Okay, everybody's jumping around. Sorry, Helen. Helen Peters.
Helen Peters, Director of Regional Planning and Transportation, Salt Lake County.
Okay. And Jared Hall.
Sorry, Jared Hall with Murray City. Thanks.
Okay, Jeremy. Cyril?
Yeah, I'm Jeremy Searle with WCG.
Okay, and Joe Taylor.
Hi, I'm Joe Taylor. I'm a transportation planner at Salt Lake City.
Okay. And Julianne, sorry, Sabula. Okay, we'll come back. Lauren Victor.
Lauren Victor, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Thanks. I have a Mark with no last name.
Mark McGrath with the City of Taylorsville. Good morning.
Oh, hey, Mark. Okay, and Matthew.
Matthew Silsky at WFRC.
Okay, and the other Matthew.
I'm Matthew Starley at the Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services District.
Okay, and Michael Malloy.
I'm Michael Malloy with Harriman City.
Okay, Michaela Jordan.
Michaela Jordan with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Okay, I've got Nate Rockwood.
Hi, Nate Rockwood with Midvale City.
And Nikki.
Nikki Navia with Wasatch Front Regional Council.
And Ryan Beck.
Ryan Beck, Vice President of Planning with Envision Utah.
Scott Cooley.
Scott Cooley, City Engineer for Draper City.
And Ryan? No, who did I miss? Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. Shane Ellis.
Hi, this is Shane Ellis, Salt Lake County Transportation Engineering Manager, acting city engineer for Kearns.
Okay. And Shul Bishop.
Shul Bishop with Utah Transit Authority.
Okay, Steve.
Steve Pastrick, West Valley City.
Okay. Then I have Thomas McCurtry.
Hey guys, Thomas McCurtry with Avenue Consultants.
Okay. And Todd Hammond.
Todd Hammond, Draper City Engineering.
Okay, and I think Russ Fox is our last one. Is Russ on the call with us? Who did I miss? Sorry, the names on my participant list are jumping around. So if I've missed you, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group.
This is the same thing with the Salt Lake County.
Ed Knowlton is here.
Okay. And I think I heard Sam Clem.
Yep, I'm here.
Russ
Jay
Fox
Aguilar.
with UTA.
Okay,
And Jay Aguilar from UDOT.
great. Thank you.
And this is Jared Bunch with City of Holiday.
And Kayla Malden with the.
Sorry, I heard Kayla. Kayla Malden with MSD.
Hi, Gina.
Hey, Kayla.
And this is Julianne Sabula. I was muted
Oh.
earlier. I'm with Salt Lake City Transportation.
Thanks, Julianne. Good to see you.
And I'm
Thanks.
Scott Feston with Jordan School District.
Okay. Wow, we've got a great group today. All right. We wanted to, I think we got everybody. Thanks everybody for joining this morning. We want to do sort of a consent agenda item, which is an action, which is the approval of the February 16th, 2022 minutes. So if I could have a motion to approve those minutes, I would entertain that at this time.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second? And please state your name when you do the motions or the seconds. Is there a second? So it was moved by Jared Hall. I need a second.
This is Shane Ellis, I second.
Great, thanks, Shane. All those in favor, and we're not going to do a roll call vote. How about we do this? All those opposed or have a correction, please vote nay. All right, then we're going to pass it by consent, basically. All right, let's move on to the UDOT USU Veriport study for 10 minutes. Brent, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm just
Great.
trying to share a screen. There we
Thank
go.
you.
Screen shared. Can you all see that? Okay. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Nikki had reached out and I was quite intrigued to be able to offer a bit of a presentation of what we've been working on. A couple years ago, we had a UTRAC project that we started with the Aeronautics Division through UDOT. And the focus on this was to identify potential sites or suitability across the WFRC for vertiport land use and location planning. So I've been working on this project with the grad student, Caitlin Hall, and one of my colleagues, Dr. Kun Park, was at USU and just recently went to UBC. That actually happened to be my place of alum. So for this project, we have a couple definitions I'll just go through in case things are still somewhat nascent to several of you. So UAV, it's often been referred to an unmanned aerial vehicle. Now it's often unchartered because we were trying to be more inclusive, thank goodness. And it's commonly known as what we think of as drones. There are a whole different range and sizes of these. And what we're trying to identify this as a potential disruptive technology within transportation. And for the project that we pursued, we really looked at more residential type of services. So whether that's package delivery or to homes or people going out somewhere else and setting packages off, and trying to identify places around WFRC where that could be possible. Not to say that we destroy somebody's home to do this, but there's a whole long sequence of time that we'd be going through to consider where we might place these. To give you some definitions, you see the sort of scale of a Verta hub, which is really sort of like a transport center. And that can include anything from small drones up to moving people as sort of aerial taxis. Yes, if you're thinking Jetsons, it's a little bit along that road, but we don't know exactly how that will develop out. Vertiports, which are smaller sites, and the Vertistops, which are sort of these miniature kinds of things. And as you're thinking through this, I want you to imagine it for a point of reference. I don't think back in the 1920s that everybody thought the car would be what it is today. And we don't exactly know how this technology will play out in the long-term future. But the idea is that we can at least start considering this as an option, because it could affect land use decisions and some of the strategies that we make in terms of transportation planning. So we have a range of different progress. I'm just going to show you mostly capable in suitability, which really focuses on a lot of conceptual modeling of where we might put these things. We've got a new project that we've submitted a proposal to look at feasible sites. So more of the practical, identifiable locations where this could really be possible. And then that might be released into implementation at some point. Just to simplify some of what we did here, we looked at a whole range of different elements in modeling this out. So we have, I think, roughly about 30, well, I should say, yeah, about 36 different data sets that were included in our analysis as a primary geographical analysis. So we looked at a whole host of different built environment characteristics and different elements of the natural environment, as well as value-based. So as we were developing this model out, there are some additional questions that came. And one of those is, do people even know what vertiports and drone deliveries are? And do they even care where these might go? So we were able to get some funding, some small funding from the university for Caitlin Hall, my grad student, to just start a new little study. And I'll just give you a few little hints to that study, because that one has completed. We ran a study with about 200 people along the WFRC and asked them a whole host of different questions about their experience and knowledge with drones and potential uses of potential places where they would like to consider them. And then we developed some geospatial representations of where possible vertiports could be. So here you're looking at a parcel layout, and at the top you have these residential blocks. And we indicated, sort of saying, okay, hypothetically, imagine for a moment that your home is in this blue parcel and that a potential vertiport, meaning these smaller areas, these smaller hubs, are in pink. What kind of activity would you be interested in, and what sort of risks and concerns would you have associated with that? And then we did the same thing with different community centers, and we defined that broadly. But you can imagine these, yes, they could be post offices, they could be community centers as we think about them, sort of community hubs of activities. They could serve as other public amenities. And so we asked people the same question. These were all randomized in different sorts, and we get back some general consensus about this. So in essence, we definitely see a NIMBY effect. So not in my backyard, right? As often is the case with any new development infrastructure. What you're seeing on the y-axis is sort of the number of drones that people said I would feel comfortable with having landing and taking off during a day. So in a next door element, and you have to consider these could be people in urban, higher density residential, all the way to not as much rural, just because the numbers weren't there, just as you typically get with any sort of survey. But people actually said, close to me, I'd be willing to have a dozen or so of these drones take off and landing on average. And you see this going up as they go a couple blocks away. I'll just move back so you can see the scale here. So here's a few blocks to a distant vertiport area. And people felt more comfortable with saying, yeah, dozens of these within a certain period of time would be reasonable. In a community center, however, this difference was not noticed in terms of their application and interest or preferred amount of traffic that happened. It held somewhat constant. So I'd kind of put out as conversations are happening about this in the future, because inevitably they will, the legislature is starting to push for us, for UDOT in particular, to identify potential assets that we have to think about the future of UAV, that identifying sites that could be more reasonably associated with community-like centers might get more buy-in from this kind of technology. Okay, so let me jump back to going through the elements that we looked at for these maps. The other one we looked at is how we develop different rules. Yeah.
There was a comment, question in the chat. I don't know if it's timely with
didn't see it.
It's what context and information was given with regards to noise of drones, time of day, etc. And this is from,
yes.
Becca.
I would be, so she just defended her thesis, and I'll be happy to share the document. We actually have this in review. So when that's done, I'm happy to take the list of folks here and I can send that out when it gets published. I just didn't have too much information on like all the details within the 10 minutes here. We didn't restrict time of day here. We did give them some indication of noise of drones. So these would be something similar to like a lawnmower, potentially leaf blower. They might also be quieter than that, but we were using a bunch of different literature to support that. So we do have all those details and methods. I'll be happy to share those at some point. Anyone can email me. I can send them to now, or I can share that later when the document comes out. Great question. So we developed a bunch of these. Leaf blowers would be great to ban. We developed a bunch of these different spatial rule sets. So there are areas that say would be suitable for having vertiports to areas that would not be. And here we're just giving you a little bit more of a complex representation of that, of saying schools would not be suitable. Nearby schools could be possible. We're kind of concerned with it. But that sort of ring around as the green suggests this might actually be a pretty good location because they already act as community hubs, but they would be far enough away for potential distraction, noise, etc. Now, we have a whole range of different rationale for why we selected these amongst the 30-some data sets and the way in which we generated these. It was a very simple model, but it can be weighted and augmented by different organizations or groups when that model gets released. Pending conversations with UDOT, I should say. So let me just move in to give you all a little hint of what this looks like. So we have a range of different models. Here I'm showing you the aggregate model where we're not looking at whether or not there's an existing development at a parcel. Really is just telling us if anywhere is suitable and to what degree of suitability. We've eliminated and ran several other metrics on these to suggest, well, let's just look at vacant lands, or let's just look at the opportunity zones or transportation hubs or things like that. I'm not including any of these because we just don't have time, but I'm going to give you an overview of these conditions. So what you're seeing here is green being some of the most highly suitable areas for vertiports, and the orange being areas that are not. And if we had more time, I'd be happy to kind of explore all these different details with this. I thought this has changed on transparency. This will give you a little bit better condition of what's here. So the whole location itself, we have these geospatial data that can be used and adopted or considered. It would be the kind of thing to say, if we're seeing areas that are in darker green, might we consider or reconsider what's being developed in those areas, or how we might redevelop some of those existing areas? We're not developing a corridor plan for that. That's actually, WSP has a contract to do that right now. That was part of a legislative effort to ask UDOT to develop that. So they will be using some of this data to help facilitate it. I don't want to take too much more time. If there are any other quick little questions, I'm happy to entertain a couple of those. And suffice to say, we're nearing, I think by next month, we should have a website with these data available for people to explore. We've thought about having this data downloadable, but there are concerns because these could be dynamically updated, but they will be accessible. Are there any questions at all?
Brent, can you give us a quick description of how a vertiport is going to function within a community? Is this a place where Amazon's going to be dropping off packages and, community members are going to be coming in to pick them up? Or is this more for hobbyists with their drones?
Yeah, so this is meant as more commercial related work. So it could be Amazon doing this. It could be a whole host of other sites, or other companies. It could be that these would be drop-off centers. I mean, you can imagine 30 years down the road that you could walk a few blocks from your house, drop your package off, punch in some numbers. I wanted to go here, pay the slip, and away it goes, right? So it could replace some aspects of shipping in that regard. And it could be something where things could be delivered to you via that means. It could be that, including, we had people suggest like medicine delivery. So if there are ways and avenues that people aren't having to wait to go to pharmacies or certain critical needs, that those things could be delivered. This is like an unknown. I mean, there are lots of different suggestions of what the possibilities are, but I would really take us back to 1920 and wonder, what could the car be? Cars were really moving along at 15, 20 miles an hour, and horses were still far more effective than vehicles. And while we certainly have a lot of technology, there are a lot of unknowns about what could happen with this. We just want to get that conversation started.
So Brent, there's a question in the chat from Becca of what is the input from local zoning in this analysis? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so in terms of zoning, one of the data sets that we used, so this is all parcel data set from the UGRC, or formerly the AGRC. And we do have different variations of this that suggest different levels of commercial or residential that can be connected and associated with it. We didn't talk with every community here. I mean, this was a pretty small, small funded project to get a lot of this initiated. I don't know if that helps. I should mention, to go back to this proposal, one of the things that we're looking at next stage, if it's funded, is some of the feasibility. So we would be wanting to work with a set of communities in this region to discuss more in depth, what does this suitability map actually do for you? How would you make decisions, and how would we move from whether something is theoretically suitable to actually feasible regarding land use and zoning?
So Brent, another question in the chat, just one more question. Did the analysis include airspace conflict with airports or restricted airspace in any way?
Yes and no. So you can see, for instance, we're not flying anything within this Air Force base, but if we actually included existing airspace, most all of this region would not be allowed to have vertiports. Those policies are being updated by FAA, and they are closely watching this. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of different controls and elements associated with that. And those are things we could turn on and off. But if we did that, most of this entire region here would just be off limits for vertiports. There are regulated heights in which these things would fly, roughly between 400 to 600 feet above ground.
That's great information. Okay. I want to agree, sort of echo Jay's comment in the chat, which is a really great effort for all planning professionals to better understand the impacts and potential for drones. So this is really exciting, and looking forward to receiving more information from the group as it becomes available. So Brent, thank you very much.
Great, you bet. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move to our next topic. It's a discussion of the 2023 2050 RTP. When is your project needed? So I'm not sure who's taking the lead on this, the LRP group.
I will, and let me share my screen.
Great.
All right, can you all see that? All right, I got a thumbs up from Thomas.
Yep, thumbs up.
So we're good. Okay, so thanks, Dina. And Brent, excited to see that drone stuff coming through. It was one of our external forces that we looked at over the last couple of years, and we kind of put it on the shelf a little bit. We didn't have enough information to actually work it into our travel demand models and other information. But as we continue moving forward with future plans, I'm pretty confident that we'll be diving into more details with that. So appreciate that. Okay, so today wanted to provide you with a quick update on the development of the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan, and in particular, discuss the needs-based phasing. So just a reminder, the Wasatch Choice Vision, it's our region's blueprint for the future that aligns transportation, land use, and economic development strategies, and was developed collaboratively with all of you, and it's based on the 10 regional goals on the right side there. And you'll see those 10 goals pop up throughout our entire regional transportation process. We build the whole plan with an eye and a filter through those 10 goals. Regional transportation plan, multimodal, so roads, transit, active transportation, which is road and bikes, 20 to 30 year time frame. We update it every 4 years. We are almost in one more month, we will be year 4. So we will be in the 4th year of this planning process. It's financially constrained, so it's not just a wish list of projects, and it needs to conform to air quality standards. Just a reminder that almost all of the state's funding sources, federal funding, corridor preservation, local option sales taxes for transportation and capacity, all rely on the regional transportation plan for the list of projects and the priorities. So this is why we want your involvement and want you heavily involved in this, so we're all on the same page and using the same plan. So right now, as I made mention, we explored on external forces, uncertainties in the future in 2020. We tested those and reviewed projects with you all last year. And now we have a refined project list of projects needed by 2050. Next steps would include, we're working with all the other MPOs in the state, UTA, on a financial model. So that'll help us assess financial constraint. As I made mention, we need to, before we even address financial constraint, we need to identify when projects are needed by decade, and then ultimately with a goal for an adoption of the plan in May of 2023. So what is needs-based phasing? It's the process of prioritizing projects based on when they are needed. So this initial phasing process is independent of any funding discussion. So we try to keep those two things separate. We don't want to try to build a plan based on how much funding we have, or well, we ultimately do, but to identify when a project's needed, we just want to know when is the right time, which 10-year or decade it's needed between now and 2050. So on the previous slide, our first phase will go out to 2032, second phase out to 2042, and then the final plan 2050. So just keep that in mind as we talk about this. So we began the phasing process, reviewing criteria to align with the state's funding evaluation criteria. So the Transportation Investment Fund and the Transportation Investment Fund, or TIF and TTIF. We looked at the WFRC's federal transportation funding evaluation criteria. So the Surface Transportation Program, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, the Transportation Alternative Program, STP, CMAQ, TAP, if you've heard those acronyms. We've looked at how those projects are funded and tried to align our regional transportation evaluation criteria with how projects are actually being funded, what data sources are they using, what kind of, are we in close alignment with the weighting of those projects. We've coordinated this. We brought this to you a couple of months ago. We've taken it to the Regional Growth Committee. We've taken it to the Active Transportation Committee for input on the weighting. And as you can see there in the very far left column of this sheet, or this chart, the Wasatch Choice goal that the evaluation criteria ties to. So as I made mention, they're all tied to the goals. So here on your screen, you'll see the active transportation criteria and weightings. An example here of changes is that in the last plan, we were using Strava data to help us identify, a demand or need. In this plan, we are not using Strava. We've kind of realigned that with how UDOT's, the criteria that UDOT's using for their TIF AT funding source. So that's just a quick example, but we can, if you're interested in more of the details, we can definitely share this. But as you can see, total project weighting out of 100 points at the bottom, and it's spread out over quite a few different criteria. Here's the roadway phasing criteria. We've placed these three. You'll see something different on the right, quite a few more numbers. We've placed each of the projects in 3 different categories. So does this roadway project, is it a community within a community type of a project? So more of a local collector, minor arterial type project. Does it a project that helps connect the community to the region? And or is it a project that's kind of region to region, or larger portions within the region? And the reason we did this is that sometimes some of these criteria, the weighting needs to be a little higher. For instance, reducing vehicle hours of delay. Freeways, it's important that we put a higher weighting towards the freeways and reducing delay. Whereas on like a collector road, delay is not the major criteria. A higher criteria or higher need or weighting might be improving safety on that collector, or it may be how it connects to centers or something like that. So you can kind of see that they vary a little bit between each of those 3 categories. And we're scoring projects kind of relative to each other's, the projects there. Transit criteria and weighting can be seen here. And an example of an update is that we updated the existing and future ridership, the weighting. So right now they're both the same, and in the past plans, they hadn't been exactly the same. They were a little bit different, and we work, really closely again with UTA on these criteria, along with the groups that we had mentioned before. So let's see, needs-based phasing. So what our game plan, and apologies, we had intended to have a draft needs-based phasing for you today. We were going to share a link with you. I'll show you I'll give you a little teaser. It's a really cool map that Matthew Silsky here in our office has put together. But it took into consideration, the game plan is, we were going to show you this map, allow you about 3 weeks to make comments on the phase needs. And it's important that we get your input on these phase needs. As I made mention, they'll lead totally into the financially constrained phasing part of our work here in a couple months. We'll send out an email Friday or Monday with this information, but I will share with you a little bit of a teaser on the map itself. So can you all see, did the map pop up here? Okay, so this is what the map's going to look like. You have the ability to turn on a couple different backgrounds if you need to here in the top left. Here on the right, it says, click on a project on the map, you can leave a comment. So it'll be nice. I'll show you how to do that. As you can see here, it's a little messy, right? Because it's every project in the RTP, over 12 or 1,300 projects, road, transit, active transportation projects in the plan. So if you're interested in one mode, we'll pretend like we're Mark in Taylorsville. We're going to zoom in here to Taylorsville. I want to look at roads first. I'll click off active transportation and transit, and I'll look at the roadway projects within the Taylorsville. Click on 2700 West. I'll look and say, oh, the projects that phase 1 need. Now, when you saw this map, remember that these were, I think the phases are based on the 2019 needs-based phasing. They have not been updated, or they might be partially updated with some of the projects. When we send it out to you, they'll be all updated. You can click here to leave a comment on the little leave a comment button, put your name, organization, super helpful in the fact that we'll want to get back in touch with you if we have some comments or we want to have some dialogue back and forth. Obviously, not all projects can be phase 1 needs. So keep that in mind as well. We also realize we're not starting from ground zero in 2023, meaning, wow, I'm so glad we have no needs in 2023, and we are only looking at what's needed between 2023 and 2032. It's not the case, right? There's a whole backlog of needs on all three modes. So we realize that phase one will have a larger portion of needs than phases 2 and 3, just because it's like I made mention, there's that backlog. We are not caught up. We probably will never be caught up no matter what. You know, keep that in mind, but like, don't just come to us, please, and say, put all of my projects in phase one. Because if you do that, most likely everybody else has done that, and we can't have 100% of our projects in phase one, right? It can't all be needed in the first 10 years. Some of these projects, for instance, this, you know, Oker Boulevard out here on the west bench of Rio Tinto, most likely phase 3 need, right? I mean, it's kind of a lot depends on when the development and the growth continues out there and what Rio Tinto does. So yeah, so if you're interested in just looking at what phase 1 projects, you can do that. You can look at them by mode. The line weights are a little bit different, so you can kind of click on the projects. It's a little bit trickier, so you may want to keep it by project type. Might be a little bit more helpful as you're going through this, but really focusing on your community, but also kind of take a tiny bit of a step back and kind of look at how the region will play out there. So any questions on that? Thoughts? All right, good.
Great.
So I just walked you through this map. We're gonna give you about 3 weeks to give us comments, and we're not gonna wait until all comments are in on May 13th. We'll start as soon as the comments start coming in. We'll start doing follow-up one-on-one back with you. If you make a comment, feel free to make a comment on a UDOT road. But know that we'll work directly with Region 2 on any of those comments for adjusting phasing to make sure that we're on the same page with the region, and vice versa. If UDOT makes a comment or makes an adjustment to a phased project within your community that seems to not align with what we've heard from you, we'll reach back out to you. So we'll do a lot of one-on-one or one-on-twos and coordination to make sure we're all comfortable with the phasing. After we move from the phasing, we will move right into financially constraining the plan. So that's where it's going to get a little bit more tricky, right? Right now we're identifying which phase 1, 2, or 3. When we get to financially constraining the plan, we definitely don't have all the money for all the projects, right? So some phase 1 projects that were needed will most likely slip to a phase 2 for financially constrained. Phase 2 projects usually slip, some of them slip to phase 3. And then ultimately there are projects that are needed towards the end of the plan that we just don't have expected funding for, and we put them in an unfunded category. So I'll give you a little bit of a perspective. In the last plan, we had about $12 billion of transit projects throughout our whole region, and we only had $5 billion of expected transit funding. So we had to move a significant amount of projects from phase 1 or out from the plan to further phases and even to unfunded. So that gives you a tiny perspective. It wasn't as bad for roadway and for active transportation. This is the first time we're actually looking to financially constrain the active transportation projects. This all leads us up to our fall workshops, where we invite your mayors, your city councils, planning commissioners, city managers, economic development, engineers to come participate with us, UDOT and UTA, Envision Utah, the League of Cities and Town at our fall workshops. Those comments will lead us to our first official public comment, air quality conformity, in the first part of 2023, with the adoption in May of 2023. So hopefully I put enough exclamation marks on why it's important that you provide input and review when we send out this email here in the next couple of days. Hit me up if you have any questions. Dina?
Hey, Jory, Becca from Salt Lake City has a question. Becca, I
Oh.
see you have your hand raised.
You can count on me to ask questions.
Good.
So one question I have is the active transportation financial constraint restricted to traditional active transportation funding sources? Or how does that work, given that active transportation is also eligible for things like STP or CMAQ, which people may or may not think of as an active transportation?
Right. We have not got the numbers back from, we have a firm, Lewis Young Roberts, Birmingham, that's helping us pull together this financial model. I haven't seen the numbers, Becca, on the active transportation. I know that it's going to be better, and this, we might have to have a little bit of back and forth with them. I know it's going to be better than if we had built this model 3 or 4 years ago, just with the amount of funding that came from the legislature this last year, the the money that the Transportation Commission has programmed from the TIF Act AT and the TTIF first last mile. But I think, Becca, we've looked at the at least in the past CMAQ, STP, and we've peeled off some of that and not put it in the roadway category. But I don't know if we didn't have some of that went to transit for CMAQ. But I don't know what we've done with the AT piece of it. So I think we can look at some of that. And we might, the one thing that we won't capture very well are like one-time grants and things, and funding sources like that. But if interested, maybe we can run some of the financial numbers by a handful, like maybe you and a couple others, just to see if we're missing anything.
Okay. I also wonder, with all the federal funding that's out there currently, how that's incorporated. And I also wondered about climate change and whether climate change metrics are at all included in the different criteria that you were showing. That is now something that is being considered as part of the federal goals. And so I just wonder how climate change may or may not play into this criteria.
To answer your first question, we are incorporating the new federal funds, at least the bill funds and the ongoing programming. The one-time grants and appropriations, we don't capture those. Just because we're trying to look out 30 years and try to have some consistency, or some confidence that the funds won't, it's just a one-off. And now we built a plan thinking we're going to get some funds every year. As for greenhouse gases, our evaluation criteria, I don't think specifically address greenhouse gases, even though our regional transportation plan will in some way address those federal criteria and the greenhouse gases.
Yeah,
Julie, do you have any other thoughts or comment on that one?
There's some new funding source that's going to the MPOs that's about climate change. And I don't remember the details about it, but it's kind of like, now there's STP, CMAQ, TAP, and this other thing. Do you know anything about that or how that would be programmed?
Are you talking about the carbon?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's like 3 new discretionary grants, and I don't believe that the NOFOs or anything are out on those on how they'll be programmed. But we can take a look at how, what the federal government is saying in terms of how they're ranking those projects and see if we can incorporate anything. One of the other parts of that bill was a performance measures pilot program to kind of help MPOs do performance measures. And so that's another place where we could kind of submit something and try to incorporate more resiliency into this phasing criteria as well.
Okay. I was also,
Becca, Ben Withridge is on. I don't know, I haven't seen him unmute, but I think he would be tuned into some of those funding sources that we'd be programming, since that would kind of fall in our short range planning group's lap.
okay. Can I have one more question?
Yeah, that's Dina.
Just a quick one.
So I understand that UDOT roads are primarily the jurisdiction of UDOT, and that UDOT's input is kind of primary on those. I'm wondering if you could give me any perspective on interchanges where UDOT roads and local streets interface.
So intersections or interchanges?
Interchanges.
That any interchange also, we'd want to make sure we're coordinating with the DOT. And again, it's not,
Well,
you know, just
the local municipality is not proposing interchanges.
There
That's
have
the
been
other way
local
around. UDOT says we want an interchange. How does that play out?
there have been local communities that have proposed interchanges.
Okay.
And there currently are. I know there's one down, we're in discussions in Bluffdale, Sandy, and 94 South. But if there's ones, Becca, that are on the plan that the city's not excited about, let's chat with Grant.
Okay.
And UDOT.
Okay.
We have to cut off questions right now. If you have additional ones, I would suggest sort of send them to Jory and we can touch base with them when we meet again. So Jory, thanks. We're gonna be looking for the email that you're gonna be sending. Everybody should put May 13th on their agenda, because as you can see on our agenda, that draft financially constrained RTP, we're going to be discussing in July. So we want to make sure that Jory and his team are going to stay on track with regard to that timing. So I'd like to throw the time now to Bert to talk a little bit about the population and employment and where growth we believe is going to be occurring in the future. So Bert.
Bert, before you jump in, Dina, we put a sign-in sheet for people to sign in attendance, so we can kind of keep a attendance roll. So I just shot the link in there again. If you could jump in there, put your name down, that'd be awesome.
Great, good recommendation or good reminder. Thanks, Dory. Okay, Bert, let's talk about population.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tina. So just going to provide a quick update. It seems like we're maybe a little bit behind on time on the socioeconomic forecast that we're updating in conjunction with the 2023 RTP. Let's see if I can get. So just real kind of brief intro. The goals for updating the socioeconomic projections are to forecast the distribution of population, households, and employment by major sector annually through 2050 across the region. And we do that using some software tools, a lot of data resources, community feedback, and professional judgment at the end, just to make sure that we all like what we see. We're providing these projections, again, at two scales, at the traffic analysis zone level, or TAZ, and then what we call city area projection areas, which are essentially aggregations of the smaller TAZ areas to approximate city boundaries. And then, when we're done, these projections are integral pieces to inform the travel demand model, some of our RTP related performance metrics, and pretty much any regional or local analysis that they're useful for. And this is maybe a little bit much, but just kind of showing sort of the modeling activity that we do in conjunction with the other groups at WFRC and all of our partners, to get the land use model and the transportation models right. We've got to have a lot of input data. We've got to have some very specialized software for the travel modeling and also for the land use modeling. And that's where our real estate market model comes in, which tries to simulate future development and redevelopment, given the existing conditions, how the market is behaving, sort of a profitability simulation for developers, working on greenfield development and also redevelopment. And the result is that we get inputs for our forecasts for both just sort of like population and density, urban form, but also the travel demand model and our air quality models. So a little bit about REM, the real estate market model. We're updating our base year to 2019. So, a lot of what the future looks like is current conditions. So we want to make sure that we've got that reflected well. We use a lot of parcel data from the county assessors for building characteristics and valuation. We get employment data through workforce services and the census and the IRS. And we get our county level controls that these projections have to adhere to at a county level from the Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah. So as we build up to creating a draft set of projections to bring to you all for feedback, we've been working on a lot of data sets, and you've seen these perhaps maybe in our newsletter or our map of the month feature, or maybe you've heard me talk about them in previous meetings. But really important to us are future land use from general plan maps, projects in the pipeline that have been permitted or approved, otherwise approved, some of the large single owner development areas like the Hill Air Force Base area, the Point, Daybreak, on and on and on. And then I'd include the Inland Port area in there. It's sort of a special area. And then feedback from you all. And then, you know, we're not just relying on what comes out of REM. We're also doing some post-processing to make sure that we like the final results. And that includes adding in some non-market related development. I think that the poster child for that is what's happening at Hill Air Force Base and the Falcon Hill related government contract office space. So just taking a look at this data stuff, because in a little bit more detail, because it's so important to our projections. One of the things that we've put out is a housing unit inventory across the Wasatch Front, looking at housing units, the types of housing units, the age of housing units. That all is useful information generally, but it's also really important for getting the existing conditions right for our socioeconomic projections. We've worked with all of you to gather the most recent general plan maps, and then we've worked to sort of standardize those or generalize those across jurisdictions. We call this our Generalized Future Land Use Map, or GFLU, and the real estate market model is using this as an input in terms of what can go where in the future and at what density. We've also worked with every city up and down the Wasatch Front to refine the Wasatch Choice Center boundaries. That was a year or so back, and that was an amendment made to the 2019 RTP to incorporate these. But again, these are areas where we're expecting perhaps more density, more mixed use above and beyond what might be in the current general plan. So REM is considering those capacities and land use types as well. And then the last kind of specific example I'm bringing up is that as we work toward the 2023 RTP, we'll in addition to adopting the plan, the new travel model and new socioeconomic projections will be adopted by our council. And we've got an updated set of traffic analysis zones that we're expecting to be in those adopted models. We've added about 500 traffic analysis zones up and down the Wasatch Front. And these have a better alignment to city boundaries, to plan future roads, and also to kind of land use divisions. And if you kind of look at this, we've got city boundaries colored with a gray outline, and you can see that the TAZs align pretty darn well with the city boundaries. So we'll get better sort of city area level projection numbers in the 2023 projections. All of this and more pretty easy to find at maps.wfrc.org or our data portal site, data.wfrc.org. And you can ask me, contact me if you've got questions or can't find what you're looking for. So our timeline, and I apologize, I don't have a nice calendar logo, my slide like Jory and his team, but so today I'm going to ask folks, if you have a point person for your city or county, the county level, that would like to be contacted to review the projections, that you drop your name and email in the chat or send it to me via email. It'd be great to get that from every city. Late next month, we will have a And we will share that with the context for a few weeks to review and get feedback. We'll also put it into an interactive map to make it easier to use. We'll have city area level spreadsheet sheets, and the GIS data set is something that we can share as well. We're also interested in feedback on any significant project starts or approvals that are happening in your city that you think we may not be aware of, because we want to get those into our pipeline projects database. So we'll take that feedback, we'll refine our work a little bit, and we'll bring back a final draft forecast in August. And that will be distributed with the beta version of the new travel demand model expected the fall of this year. And then the last thing on the timeline is the adoption of the RTP. And with it, the adoption of the new models and the new forecast. And as Dory mentioned, that's next May. So I'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions, and invite you one more time to just drop contacts for the socioeconomic review into the chat.
Okay, any questions for Bert on this? Okay, it doesn't look like we do. Nothing in the chat either. So Bert, thank you so much for that. And again, just a reminder to drop your name, as Bert has asked, or send directly to him your contact information for your jurisdiction. So great. Thanks so much, Bert. We appreciate it. All right, I'm going to turn the time over to Michaela for the awarded transportation and land use connection projects.
Thank you, Dina. Hi, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of sharing with you all the 2022 awards for TLC. For any of you who aren't as familiar with TLC, it's a partnership between UTA, UDOT, WFRC, and Salt Lake County, and it provides technical assistance to local communities. The program has 4 major goals: to maximize the value of investment in public infrastructure, to enhance access to opportunities, to increase travel options to optimize mobility, and to create communities with opportunities to live, work, and play. This year, partners were able to contribute a bit over $1.5 million with a local match of $457,000, which is the highest local match we've had in program history. So that's really great. And that brings the TLC total to just under $2 million this year. This is spread across 16 awards in 19 communities. So we have 8 in the Salt Lake urbanized area, 7 in the Ogden-Layton urbanized area, 1 in Tooele County, and 1 that's multi-jurisdictional. So now I'll go through and share some of the projects. We have 3 ordinance updates, 1 from one of our smallest communities in the region and 1 from our largest city in the region. So we have Copperton's active transportation plan and connectivity ordinance. We love to see that first step towards implementation right there along with the plan. We have Salt Lake City 300 West corridor plan and zoning amendments. This corridor plan will build on existing work and existing transportation improvements along 300 West. And then we have a citywide zoning ordinance update for Ogden, as their zoning code is quite a few years old and they are looking to modernize it. We awarded many small area plans this year, most of which are in Wasatch Choice Centers. We have Layton City's Gordon and Highway 89 Town Center Master Plan. We have North Ogden's Southtown Commercial Center Plan, North Salt Lake's Town Center Market Study, which builds upon a previous TLC award in North Salt Lake, looking at their town center. And this goes into more detail. Again, a next step towards implementation. For Midvale City, we have a historic Main Street urban design project. This will look at the streetscape and pedestrian improvements and wayfinding. We also have the Central Point Station area plan for South Salt Lake. We are really happy to be able to award the station area plan given the new legislation that has come out about station area planning. And so that will lead to a brief segue to let you all know that we do have a webpage up for station area planning. Right now it has the map of required station areas as well as a summary of HB 462. Soon it will also have a certification checklist that cities can use to make sure that their station area plans meet those legislative requirements, as well as information and how to apply for technical assistance to conduct these station area plans. So those pieces of it aren't up yet, but they will be up. So I believe Jory's going to drop the link in the chat. And if you just keep refreshing that every so often, and we'll make sure to let you all know when that information is up there. Okay. We also have 2 active transportation plans in addition to Copperton's. We have a study of I-215 shared use AT path in Holiday and an active transportation plan for Tooele City. We have 3 corridor studies. Harriman is going to continue work looking at transit in the southwest part of Salt Lake County with a transit corridor and land use study. Salt Lake City is looking at 1300 East and the University District for a circulation study. This is in close partnership with the University of Utah. And Farmington City is building on their station area plan that's in progress and almost complete to do a North Station area innovative transportation study. We also have 3 regional or citywide plans. Salt Lake County has a Southwest Waterways visioning effort that will be in Bluffdale, Harriman, Riverton, and West Jordan. This effort is similar to the 7 Greenways vision, but for a different part of the county. And the Intermountain Healthcare and Zions Bank funding is in part supplementing this project as well as the TLC funding. For Riverdale and West Point, we have general plan updates, and this is Riverdale's first TLC application and award, so that's great to see there. So those are the awards for 2022. In the TLC process right now, we're in the post-award instructions and resources phase. So if you do have a project out there, you should have got your letter of concurrence, or we'll be getting it soon. Once the mayor signs that letter of concurrence, we send a local match invoice to the city, and project procurement can start as early as July 1st in 2022. In that time, if it's really important for you and your community that you start in July as soon as possible, then you can work on drafting your scope of work. If you have any questions on how to do that or want examples of past TLC project scopes, you can email me or anyone else in the community and economic development team here, and we'll provide some resources. And to wrap it up, we just want to remind you again of the TLC projects map. All of the awards in TLC history are on this map. The statuses are shown. And if you click on a project, you can see the application for that project. And if it's a finished project, you can see that final product on it as well. So that's a really helpful resource that you can use to, brainstorm for future projects or think about what needs TLC could help you with in your community. So that's all. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Great information, Michaela. Thank you. And as you mentioned, Jory, while you were talking, he did put both the TLC map and the SAP webpage in the chat. And just a reminder, as you can see on our agenda, we're probably going to be coming back to HB 462 in July, just to add some more meat to those bones. So thanks, Michaela, for doing that. Okay, I'm going to turn the time now over to the safety and local communities, the speed management study. So Adam and Jeremy.
You bet. Thanks for the invite today. I'm excited to be here. I'm Adam Lowe with UDOT Traffic and Safety, and oversee the traffic studies, statewide traffic studies program. I brought with me Jeremy Searle, who helps us a lot. He works for WCG and helps with speed management as well as our ICE program. And so I want to talk a little bit about speed management and what UDOT's doing to better support the communities. How many of you have had a request come in through your local citizens or through your city councils and wanted a speed limit lowered on a UDOT route through your community? And so you request that through the local region, get a study back a couple weeks later to find out that the recommendation is to either leave the speed limit what it is or to increase the speed limit, which is usually the opposite of what you wanted it to say. We realize that we haven't done a great job in the past with supporting local communities with speed management. We've have a desire to do better. So we've thrown a little emphasis at this. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about what speed management is. It's setting speed limits based on the context of the road, not just the 85th percentile speed, which we've really focused on in the past. It's reinforcing targeted speed limits with infrastructure changes. And obviously the goal is safety. And the intention is to get drivers to travel the speeds that make sense for the given location. And that could include things like raising the speed limit or lowering the speed limit. It could mean implementing treatments to increase safety or increase the safety of the existing posted speeds, or implementing treatments that lower the speeds, slow the speeds. And so we've created a new study type, speed management study, that goes above and beyond what we've done in the past, where we mostly focused on the 85th percentile speed. And these target very specific locations where speeds are concerned, such as downtown communities, entrances to more rural communities, high crash locations, for example, along curves on a state route. And this is really just to help come up with some very high level recommendations that can be discussed in more depth between the local communities and the region to enhance speed management in your communities. Like I said, it goes above and beyond just focusing on 85th percentile speeds. We collect data on 50th percentile speeds and add that to the speed profile. And the biggest change is the emphasis on the context of the roadway. We observe the surrounding area. We look at where the pedestrians want to cross, where the cyclists, what kind of cyclists and treatments are in the area, land use, where are the shopping centers, the residential areas, the parking lots, the outdoor activity areas, where are we wanting the speed to be lower to protect those that are using the facility. And so within the speed study, now that you'll get back when a speed management study is requested, there'll be a section in there that really focuses on the context, what was observed by the study engineers, what treatments could support the targeted speed in that area to increase the safety, to lower the speeds, to add extra safety measures where the speed limit won't be adjusted. And that includes both low cost and short-term treatments, as well as recommendations for long-term treatments as the corridor is developed. And once again, those details are to be worked out between the communities and the local region on what resources are available to help us accomplish these and install these treatments. And so now I'll turn the time over to Jeremy to talk a little bit more about the specifics of some of these treatments and the fact sheets that we developed.
Thanks, Adam. As Adam mentioned, a big focus on these speed management studies and this whole process is to focus on the context of the corridor and see what the speed limit really should be for what the roadway is and what it is becoming, as opposed to in the past where we just looked at how fast people want to drive it. And so a lot of these recommendations look at how we can help the context of the roadway meet or fit better the speeds that should be on this roadway. And you'll notice as Adam went through, we have both short and long-term treatments that we'll recommend. But a big part of this is the partnership between UDOT and the communities. If, as a city, if you request a speed study on a UDOT roadway,
please expect to be invited out to a field review to talk about some of the recommendations that come from this and talk with UDOT about what treatments may work in your community and what don't, and what may fit along the specific roadway that you're looking at. So again, it'll be a partnership and work together on both implementation and longer term treatments through here. So to make this easier and to provide more information to communities and UDOT and all partners in this, we've developed these info sheets that we think are really beneficial. They have a lot of good information such as advantages, limitations. They give rough costs. They give crash mitigation information. And there's one of these for each of these different treatments that you see listed here in the middle. And I'll go through some of these here in a second. But we think they're really helpful and can be used not only just for UDOT, but for your communities as well. So I'm going to switch over here to these info sheets. Hopefully you can see those well. So this first page here is just an introduction to what speed management is, and how it works, and how that may mean engineering your roads differently, helping to create a context where people want to drive a certain speed. It doesn't mean that we're artificially lowering the speed limit. We're trying to create a context where people want to drive a certain speed. The speed management does kind of fall within that safe systems approach. We're trying to keep our roads safer as well as more enjoyable to drive here with these different things. So here are some of our different speed management techniques. The first one that's discussed here is radar speed signs. You see these quite often throughout the state. You'll notice here on the sheet that it gives you some high-level stats on how well they work. For example, we would expect speeds to reduce between 2 and 10 miles per hour in the areas where these are implemented. They cost around $10,000, and studies have shown that they reduce crashes around 5% in these areas. You can see when looking at the roadway itself, some speed limits where this would be appropriate, traffic volumes, number of lanes, those types of things. It gives some example locations where these have been implemented, as well as some advantages and disadvantages. Another that we've used is the pavement speed messages. Those have been used at a couple places in the state. You can kind of see some of the stats there. We do see a 50% reduction in vehicles traveling 10 miles per hour over this posted speed limit. They're not very expensive to install, about $5,000. And overall, we see a 1 to 2 mile per hour reduction in speeds there. Optical speed bars is another one. We don't have any locations right now where this has been implemented in Utah, but these are kind of cool. They create this optical illusion that you are going faster by placing these speed bars on the edge of the road, especially around curves that become closer together, and it makes you feel like you're going faster, and so you naturally slow down on these. As we've met with and done one of these speed management studies in Region 3, we're looking to implement these, and we're excited to see how well they work there in that location in Region 3. Road diet is another one. You can see a couple of examples there. Cougar Boulevard in Provo is a great example of that road diet where they put in the separated bike lanes. So these work well, and you can see some of the information there. Landscape medians can work really well. They can also create pedestrian refuges for like mid-block crossings and things like that. Roundabouts are also really good speed management techniques. They also reduce crashes very significantly. So there's a lot of advantages there. They are expensive initially to install, but once they're installed, they work very well, both for operations, speed reduction, safety, those types of things. Road narrowing, there's different techniques for narrowing the road, and those do create a way to manage speeds and to get people to slow down on those. And there's some information there. Curve extensions, these can be really beneficial. They slow people down. They give more, they give a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians and increase safety there. They can be done really nice where they're landscaped and look really good. This is down in Richfield that you see that picture there. There's a lot of benefits for those.
Oh, Jeremy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. We only have a few more minutes for your presentation. I'm wondering if you can drop in the chat the link to, I'm hoping there's a link to all of these resources on the UDOT website that individual communities can download. But
there is.
Or if you have a call to action for us or any additional information, sorry to push you along, but we want to be mindful of the time.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. I will put a link in the chat. What we hope to do is for you to see these, utilize it in your communities, as well as work together with UDOT to implement some of these measures on UDOT roadways as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or Adam, and we're happy to talk through them with you. But we feel like there's a lot of benefits here in creating safer communities. So thank you.
Yeah, and then Becca had a question in the chat. And what I would ask is maybe if you can take a look at that chat if you haven't opened it, and just maybe respond directly to that question offline, just so we can make sure.
Yeah, great question. So she asked about vertical treatments, such as speed tables, raised crosswalks. We did talk a lot about those, and I think that there are appropriate places to use those in communities. The focus on these speed management techniques was for UDOT roadways. And so we tried to focus on things that would be very appropriate for UDOT roadways. And most of the time, those vertical treatments in a UDOT roadway are not going to work very well, because a big part of UDOT roadways is moving a lot of traffic, right? Keeping Utah moving. There are opportunities for some of those, and we list those at the very end, the very last sheet of that info sheet that has some other techniques that might be applicable. So there are probably some unique locations on UDOT roads that those can work, but for communities in general, I think those could be very appropriate.
Great, thank you, Jeremy and Adam, so much for that. We appreciate it, and look forward to the link in the chat that we can access those cut sheets. Fabulous, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I want to turn over our last 10 minutes of our meeting to Park Prescription Utah. I think it's Sarah Kennison. Are you with us? Sorry, I don't see Sarah on the call. What?
May need to move her to the July meeting.
Okay, we can definitely do that. We'll include that in our July meeting. So sorry to have rushed you along, Adam and Jeremy. We have an extra bit of time now, but maybe we'll take advantage of this. I know, Jory, we had talked about wanting to get sort of a poll from the folks on this call about participating in July in person. I know it's that time. I think we're never going to eliminate the hybrid option, if I'm correct, or if I'm misstating something there, Jory, please let me know. But it seems like if we can meet in person, we'd like to meet in person in July. If there's enthusiasm among the folks on this call to do that, knowing that we would likely have a hybrid option for convenience in case folks can't travel long distances or just haven't built back in the travel time around meetings. I don't know about all of you, but WebEx to WebEx is easier if you've forgotten to build travel time into your meetings these days. So the best way to do this is really, I think, is a raise of hands. Does everybody know how to do the hand raising option in your Zoom? You go to the reactions button that's down on the bottom tray, and you'll see a little raise hand. So I would just ask anybody who's interested in participating in an in-person meeting to raise your hand, and that'll just help us plan a little bit about where we should convene and how many breakfast treats we should include, which is always an important component to this, right? It looks like we have good interest in that, Jory. So I think we need to coordinate an in-person option for July's meeting.
All right. Yeah, we will, let's chat, Dina, and see if we hold that at WFRC, if there's a place at the county. I mean, the hybrid gets a little tricky in the fact that you need cameras and the way things are presented, right? If, for instance, we went super old school and brought to you all a draft financially constrained plan, we would ask Bert and his team to plot them. We'd tape them to a foam core. We'd stand around the boards, but that doesn't work for hybrid people, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to figure out, like, if we do end up having a hybrid, how to do that and still get participation and dialogue, you know, so we can work through some of those logistics, but if we'll take definitely the lead from you, Dina, as the chair, and looks like you, as you said, there's plenty of interest in that.
I think that just fosters the dialogue and the before and after. I think a lot of us who have started going back to in-person meetings, we've missed that. I've missed the casual conversations before and after the meetings and just the reconnections in a more personal level. So, and I do think we just need to let this team know, like Jory said, if we do a hybrid option, there may be we might have some slight hiccups in terms of participation, but we're going to work those out and figure out how we can keep everybody engaged on the issues that we need to talk about. So thank you for providing the vote. And what I do also want to say is just to mention at our next meeting, we have the draft financially constrained 1023 RTP that we're expecting. We're going to have a little bit more information about the HB 462. I think Michaela mentioned there's going to be an opportunity to put some more meat on the bones on that one. A green infrastructure conversation, and then kind of looking ahead at Wasatch Front funding programs. So I think if there's interest in other agenda topics, I would ask that you send an email to Jory and let him know kind of what you're thinking about now that you think would be beneficial to this larger group to engage in and discuss, because we're going to continue building those conversations. And then Jory, like you said, let's just push the park prescription Utah to the meeting in July. Are there any other questions or comments from everyone before we wrap up? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I would say have a really fabulous day and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dina.